Ms. Hanabusa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the line that you were saying, I visited NASCO and I got their nice little graph about their concerns about the dips and where the military is not building. I think this is what you're talking about with the auxiliary base. And in that situation, what they were hoping for was to be sort of replaced with the commercial building, so that we would have a constant and we would not lose really for lack of a better description, the talent pool that we would normally lose if we go beyond a certain point. So this then brought in, of course, the discussions on the Jones Act, which, of course, affects our cargo ships and the commercial base. So given the fact that the military has a strong sense about maintaining, for example, and keeping MLPs and keeping everything going, keeping our first tier shipbuilders healthy, which is what your statement says, that they're going to be healthy. But then we come to the second tier levels, or the auxiliaries and the amphibious, we have these potential gaps. So do you feel that the government itself should take a position to strongly encourage and again maintain the Jones Act capabilities requirements, so that we would be able to see the constant or hopefully have the commercial needs then meet those peaks and valleys that we have?
Yes, ma'am. Let me first specifically with regards to NASCO, very clearly NASCO needs more than just Navy auxiliary shipbuilding to remain a viable new construction shipyard. And part of their business strategy, and frankly part of our industrial-based strategy working with NASCO, is that Navy shipbuilding will provide a base, but they will need commercial shipbuilding over and above the Navy program. And so we have with NASCO what's referred to a shipbuilding capabilities preservation agreement that that takes the overhead associated with Navy shipbuilding work and provides NASCO the ability to bring commercial work in over and above the Navy work without having to further adjust the overhead, except as outlined in the agreement with the Navy. That gives them the opportunity to be more competitive for commercial work. You raised the question on Jones Act shipbuilding. The Navy has been and continues to be a strong supporter for Jones Act shipbuilding. One of the challenges that the nation is wrestling with right now is that a lot of the shipping where the owners would be coming to our shipbuilders through the Jones Act is being held up because of the economic picture.
And that's exactly the, I guess, the issue, because that's where we start to have MARAD and loan guarantees, because for most of the commercial shipbuilders, they need to be able to access MARAD and the loan guarantees. So has there been any consideration given to maintain the shipbuilding capabilities as to whether some of that responsibility, whether Congress should consider shifting it partially or looking at it in terms of a defense strategy as well? Because clearly to maintain our second-tier shipbuilders and ship repair facilities, we need to have that constant flow and that relationship with the commercial. Has it been given any consideration? Because I know that the loan guarantees for the commercial building is an issue.
I can clearly say it's been given consideration, and that we've looked at some initiatives, but we are limited in terms of how much the Navy can do beyond SCPA, beyond support for Jones Act, and beyond direct Navy contracts, which we do have a good number of with our second-tier shipbuilders. But when it comes to the commercial shipping side, we're very limited into as far as how far we can go to bring that forward, particularly as I described in these economic times. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I yield back balance of my time.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanabusa. We'll move then back to Mrs. Hanabusa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In one of the hearings we had regarding a discussion about how sequestration may affect especially shipbuilding, I think the person testifying said that shipbuilding was somewhat different in that you are, for lack of a better description, almost line itemed per ship. So, for example, if there was an 8% or a 10% cut across the board, which is what we're being told sequestration could be or may be, that would then cancel out, for example, the second ship. The exception, as we were told, were carriers, because carriers are permitted to be funded over a period of time. Is that correct as to how the impact it could be? So if you get 10% and you have, 2 or 3, say, MLPs, just hypothetically, and it would cut the third one completely out. Is that a correct understanding of what the impact of sequestration could be?
Not quite.
Okay.
It is correct that shipbuilding is different. The programs are effectively line item projects, and so they will separately incur nominally a 10% impact associated with if sequestration occurs. And so so when you go down to the program level, you mentioned MLP is not a good example because FY13 is we're not requesting a ship in 13. But when you go down to the program level, if you take a 10% cut, the challenge that we, the Navy, are going to deal with is how can we take a 10% cut and minimize the impact to the shipbuilding program? And there's more than just the shipbuilding contract. We have a number of activities inside of that program. So there's a shipbuilder piece, there's a government-furnished equipment piece, there are technical services. So the challenge is if we took a 10% hit in the shipbuilding program, what can we deliver within the remaining budget, and then how do we backfill either through a reprogramming action or through a subsequent budget, an FY13 budget, so that we don't lose what we've got in terms of efficiency and good pricing in our contracts. The challenges are extremely hard because there's going to be a cumulative impact, and we're going to be very limited in terms of places where we can go to augment the funding in those programs. And we do not today know what we're going to be staring at in 2014. When we will not know that when it is time to make those decisions. So this is a good example of why you're hearing such strong reaction from the department on the impacts of sequestration.
So in essence, you don't quite know what you would do. It wouldn't just be a matter of just saying if it's a 10% cut that we can't fund the third ship, just hypothetically. If there were 3 ships, you can't fund the third ship, that would then result with the elimination of a third ship. It may be, you may have more flexibility if you can cut something else within that program ID.
Well, first we need to know what comes across the line in the 13 budget. And second, we're going to need to know what happens in 14. And so when you bound the problem in that way, then we're going to be looking at what do we have left in terms of resources to execute. And I hesitate to give you a hypothetical response, but if across the board each of our shipbuilding programs took a 10% cut in 2013, and there's a subsequent type action in 2014, I can't quickly arrive at a scenario that says we're going to be able to put all the ships that we had requested under contract in 2013.
So you haven't even gotten to the point as to what or how under the Budget Control Act, which we now shift to caps after the sequestration issue. So we're talking about caps. You haven't even looked at how those caps may then affect shipbuilding.
Our energy and focus has been on building a 2014 budget that we plan to execute, building on top of the 2013 budget that we requested with Congress. We haven't looked at the alternatives associated with sequestration taking place starting the 2nd of January, carrying on into subsequent years.
But you do know that under the BCA, there's going to be caps, and the caps are not, well, they don't look like you're going to be able to recoup any of this, so there's got to be some understanding or analysis done as to what those caps are going to mean and how it's going to affect, for example, shipbuilding.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's as you work through the 2014 budget, you've already looked at the impact of the caps, with the caps in place, or are you hoping that Congress is going to do something so that those caps are not going to affect you?
It has taken all of our efforts to build the 2014, the budget that we plan to execute. We don't have added bandwidth to then build a separate budget that brings the Budget Control Act impacts in across the FIT-up. We have not done that.
That's the answer I was interested in. Thank you very much.
I would just add to that.
That's...
We have. I started by describing that in the way we build our shipbuilding program, as an example, it's very similar to our other capabilities. Is we start with the defense guidance. We overlay on top of that our resource constraints, and then we put together the best program possible to meet our national security needs. When you take a look at the impact associated with the Budget Control Act, we are going to have to go back and arrive at a new defense strategy. The impact is significant enough that we will not be able to put together the force that we need, maintain the wholeness that the CNO demands, and operate at the pace that we're operating with those types of budget adjustments.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Hanabusa.